Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bridger of Worlds podcast. I'm your host, Ioannis Kokkinos. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're on YouTube watching, thank you for tuning in. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, thank you for tuning in as well. So today is quite a spontaneous one. I've been playing around with a few topics that I've been wanting to bring to the space, which I eventually will. But I was thinking about what do I want to talk about in today's episode? And I think it's an important one. I think it's a pretty big one as far as spirituality is concerned, and pretty much everything I've been talking about so far in my podcast. There's a lot of talk about this online, so social media, anyone who's practicing spiritual modalities and within communities. We talk about this certain topic, and I think it needs to be talked about more. And I guess I'm just bringing my 2 cents to the table as far as this topic is concerned. So, the topic is spiritual boundaries. So, I'm going to talk about that today and why it's so crucial for anyone who's not just walking a spiritual path, but just living and breathing and going on in their day to day. So obviously this will touch and speak to people more that are doing some form of spiritual work. I do hope it serves those that are not doing any form of spiritual work, because boundaries are needed, whether or not we are aware of other planes beyond the veil, other dimensions, other timelines, right? So I've been talking about timelines. I've been talking about connecting to places that we visit, connecting to guides. So obviously, this is where spiritual boundaries come in, right? So this is quite a biggie for me because I've not really, as far as my spiritual journey is concerned, I've not really had one set teacher to, show me and guide me and teach me things. It's really been trial and error and following my own intuition and following my own gut feelings as far as what it is I need to say yes to, what it is I need to say no to, because we do also need to say no when it comes to spirituality and spiritual practices. There's a lot going on worldwide. There's a lot of like festivals, there's a lot of retreats, there's a lot of workshops. I can't speak for any of these spaces. I myself have visited a tiny percentage of these spaces. But I'm also seeing online, right? Like a lot of people are talking about their guides and so on and so forth. So I kind of, like I said, want to bring my input here because it is important. So whether or not you are doing spiritual work or practicing meditation, right? Even when we're meditating, we need to have spiritual boundaries and set. As I've been saying in all my episodes, everything is energy, right? We're energy, everything is conscious, we're conscious. Beyond this physical plane, there's consciousness. In the past, there's consciousness. In the future, there's consciousness. That's linear time. And then, as I said in last week's episode, around bits and pieces of time that find themselves in the present moment. Touch base with last week's episode. But really, why boundaries are important is because when we are opening, right? So I'll talk a little bit about the chakras, because when we are meditating, the idea is to really be up here, crown chakra, third eye chakra. These are our most spiritual chakras from the main 7 chakras that we have. We have actually chakras that are even higher than the third eye and the crown, but working with these 7 chakras within our human body is like more than enough to promote healing, promote awakening, and deepening our connection to ourself, those around us, our world, our creator, and so on and so forth. So when we are meditating, first and foremost, it's actually very important to also be very in tune with our root chakra, which is the chakra that grounds us into the earth, because we need to be elevating from a very rooted and grounded place. There are people out there that, will meditate all day, and when they want to open up their third eye, they want to open up the crown, but they're actually not at all rooted or grounded into their body, into the earth through their root chakra. So, boundary number one basically is really to practice also grounding if we do want to raise our energy and elevate and open up more spiritually. So, obviously, being on the earth helps, walking barefoot, being out in nature, meditating outside, right? Like just being in the body, which is a paradox because when we're meditating, we're energetically wanting, in a sense, or seeking some form of higher energy and higher connection, but that only actually is available as we connect further into our body and deepen our connection to our body, because our body is spiritual. Body is made of matter, and matter is consciousness. One thing that we definitely need to do is be connected to our body. And this also means eating healthy, hydrating properly, getting the vitamins, getting the minerals in. Breathing. Breathing is an absolute must during meditation, but really throughout our day, right? Being in tune with our breath and how deep we're breathing, how much we're exhaling, how much we're inhaling, if we're holding our breath, right? So obviously when stressors come in, that will trigger us holding our breath, but we also need to be conscious of our breath even as we're going about our day, even without meditation being in the picture. So once all that's said and done, right, we've grounded, we've rooted, and we want to open up energetically and spiritually, we are accessing other planes. We are accessing other dimensions, and this touches base with the Akasha. This touches base with the collective unconscious, which I've been talking about, the etheric zone, right? The zone of the archetypes, the deities, the collective unconscious is where all these archetypes exist, our ancestors, and really all threads of consciousness that have passed through the ages exist in the collective unconscious, because everything is energy. So first and foremost, to get really clear on spiritual boundaries, we have to be very intentional when we are accessing these planes, and when we also want to practice, let's say, manifestation, right? We're all obsessed with manifesting. We're always hearing about manifesting that, manifesting this. It goes a lot deeper, and the process is actually a lot more demanding, quote unquote, than just, positive thoughts, positive thinking, and envisioning what it is we want. Because essentially, manifesting is a more modernized word for practicing magic, right? So, magic can be a very triggering word depending on your religious background and what it is we've learned about magic. And obviously, when I say magic, it's not the magic we see in movies, but magic is a form of harnessing energy, right? And that means to harness consciousness, and that means to will something into existence. So if we want to manifest something, we want to will something into existence. This is the same as practicing magic. Words can be very, very powerful. The words that we use and the intention behind the words, the energy behind the words, can also play a huge role as to what it is we're trying to manifest. This is why in magic, spells are used, right? These are groups of words that have passed on from generation to generation that carry a lot of energy. So because, let's say, spells are very, very energetically potent, and they're recited in the way that they're meant to be recited, spells carry energy and can get shit done. So it is very, very important to be able to set spiritual boundaries when we are calling in energies and we're working with energies that are just beyond the physical. Energies range from like the lowest, most densest vibration all the way to the highest and lightest, right? So it's all neutral, really. It's how we decide to work with energy and how we come to the space with our intentions that matters most, we have the power to say yes to something and to say no to something. And something else I want to mention here is also the modality of ancestral healing, right? So a lot of us are on this path of ancestral healing. Even here, we need to be able to set spiritual boundaries because obviously there are thousands of ancestors behind us. It doesn't mean they were all good people or did good deeds, and we don't know anything really about these ancestors. But a lot of the traditions, what they say is we have, each and every one of us has elevated ancestors. So even after we pass on and we leave the body, our soul continues to evolve. Our soul continues to move through experiences and learn certain lessons. So let's say we had ancestors that like really had a hard life, they had a tough life, they didn't learn the lessons, they didn't do the work, whatever, so on and so forth, and then they left their bodies and they decided to start doing the work and evolve and learn the lessons. These are ancestors that become elevated, and these are actually the ancestors we need to be focusing on and praying to. Because if we are, let's say, calling in all the ancestors, or we are thinking we need to heal like all of the bloodlines, a lot of the traumatized ancestors, a lot of their energies will actually bleed into our livelihoods. Because these spirits, yes, have left the body, but their energy remains. And if we've taken on a trauma, we've taken on a trauma, for, let's say, from a specific bloodline or specific ancestors, and we are regurgitating this trauma, we are perpetuating the trauma, this is a clear indication that we are not actually doing ancestral healing, because what the traditions say is that we need to call in, we need to ask for the elevated ancestors' help in order to heal the bloodlines. We cannot heal the bloodlines on our own. It's way too much. Like I said, we have thousands of ancestors. We don't know the stories. Unless you do research and find out what your ancestors were up to, you have absolutely no idea what they were up to, nor do I. The way we can get a sense of what the ancestral trauma is what we are moving through in our own lives as far as trauma is concerned, because the traumas regurgitate. The traumas get passed on from bloodline to bloodline until somebody decides to heal and break the patterns. So this is an absolute must when it comes to spiritual boundaries, and especially with ancestral healing, is to know and really start paying attention and really gaining awareness around cultivating a healthy connection with the elevated ancestors. Because the elevated ancestors, they're elevated, they've evolved, they've transcended, they're much higher vibrational in nature, right? Angelic like. So they are the ones that can help us. They're the ones that are willing to help us and willing to support us, because each and every one of us has ancestors that do not want to heal, that do not want to do the work, that want to stay as is, want to stay stuck. And if we are tuning into that vibration through our own livelihood, then we will actually never break the pattern. So I don't know if this is news to you or not, but whether or not you are practicing ancestral healing, it is very, very crucial to set that spiritual boundary to the ancestors that do not want to heal and want to just remain in their trauma. That's that's on them. That's up to them. That is a boundary that most definitely needs to be set, and really to make sure that you are practicing your connection and praying to your elevated ancestors, because these are the ancestors that want to help you and want to heal you and want to help heal the bloodlines. So just because you have ancestors, let's say, that do not want to heal, that does not mean that you cannot heal, right? At the end of the day, we are sovereign. this is our this is our body, this is our energy, right? Like, we're the living ones, we are the ones that are here. This is our life, this is your life, this is my life. What I say goes, what you say goes, and that is the boundary, right? That's the spiritual boundary we must set. So obviously this applies to the traumatized ancestors that do not want to evolve, but this also applies to all entities and all energies, because entities and energies that are resonating with the traumas and the lower vibrations and the lower emotions that we're carrying can enter our field. Remember, everything is energy. We all have auras, we have a soul, we have a spirit, we have thoughts, we have emotions, right? Energy in motion, emotion. So when we are vibrating at low, dense emotions, this will actually attract entities that are resonating with those same emotions and energies. Now, obviously, this affects everybody differently because we're all attuned differently to energy, to emotion, to other planes of existence. It doesn't mean we all have psychic abilities, but I do believe in some way, shape, or form we can develop some form of connection to the non physical. And the basic of the basics starts with meditation, right? When we're meditating, it is to go to the astral, is to go to the etheric zone, is to go to the realm of deities, archetypes, these threads of consciousness, that exist in these planes, because everything that has passed through the ages, whether or not decided to move on or not move on, has a place somewhere in the field, in this field of creation, this field of oneness, really, right? So when someone's saying my guides, right, like it's very important to know who your guides are. And it doesn't mean we'll know exactly who they are or that we'll see them, right? It doesn't mean we're all clairvoyant, right? It doesn't mean that we can see spirits or see ancestors, but it's a feeling. It's having a sense. And this is really about developing intuition and developing our inner knowing through connecting with ourselves, connecting through meditation, grounding into our bodies. So these are very subtle cues that we need to look for and get a sense of. And a lot of the times our body will also tell us yes or no, right? We don't even have to have like a thought. It's a physical sensation that will actually give us the green light about something and if we're right or wrong about something. This all just depends on how attuned and connected you are to your own body. And this is why it is essential. Spiritual boundary number one is to connect to the body, is to connect to that root chakra, connect to the earth. And if there's a root chakra blockage, the best medicine for root chakra blockage is to be out in nature. Doesn't matter if it's a forest, doesn't matter if it's the sea, it doesn't matter, where it is, as long as you are out in nature and really just feeling that sense of the earth holding you. That is really how you can start to heal and balance your root chakra. And that is the foundational chakra. And from there, everything opens up, everything raises. So we want to be up here, right, for meditation, for connecting to our guides, for deepening and furthering our spiritual connection, third eye, crown, but we need to start from the bottom. And that means starting from our bodies. So I just want you to remember that whether or not you are practicing any spiritual modality or meditating, remember that you are the one that's sovereign. It is your body, it is your house. You get to decide what comes in and what doesn't come in. And these are the spiritual boundaries that are absolutely a must when we are opening up. And of course, it is important on how we're feeling, right? Feeling is connected to emotion, and emotion is energy in motion. So we really do need to have a sense of connection to our own emotions when we want to start opening up further and spiritually. Sometimes it doesn't mean being like on a high and we need to be already like very high vibrational when we start meditating. I've had some of my most powerful breakthrough meditations starting out very low emotionally, because it's about connecting to the body. And as I connect to my body, as I connect to my inner centers, is how I can release energy, is how I can transform the energy. Because the idea for feeling low is not to suppress it or negate it or ignore it. We have to transform it, and we can only transform it by holding space for it. And sometimes this happens through meditation. So if you're feeling like shit, one thing I advise is just sit down and start meditating. And it's not about trying to do anything, right? Meditation is about just being very fully present, fully connected to the moment, no matter what it is. So if it's a shitty emotion or if it's a good emotion, that's the emotion you connect to, because that is what is your truth in the moment. And then you can transform it as you hold space for it. But it is crucial during these moments of connectedness and meditating to really call in the highest and greatest good, those ancestors and those guides that do want the best for you and that are helping you on your journey. And it's not so much a scary thing, right, to think that like there are lower entities or lower energies that are like attached to you or anything like that. But it is very important to cut those ties, cut those cords by setting the proper spiritual boundaries. And as far as having and feeling that support, just remember that you do have elevated ancestors that are, that's what they're there for. They're there to help the ones in the bloodlines who are willing to break the patterns, who want to heal, who want change and want to do things differently. They want to break the toxic patterns of addiction, of compulsion, of scarcity, of poverty, of lack, of fear, of guilt, of shame, right? Like, and it's not about blaming any ancestor, right? Like our ancestors in our bloodlines, whether or not they wanted to heal, wanted to do it better. Obviously, they lived through much harsher, much more oppressing and challenging times than us. And there are ancestors who have passed on that do want to heal. These are the ancestors you also want to call into your space, because this is how you're going to help heal the bloodlines. With the elevated ancestors, the ancestors that are willing to heal and that want to move on and raise their vibration, these are the ancestors you call in. The ancestors that do not want to heal, that's on them. These are not the ancestors to connect with. And that's your right. That is everyone's right, because this is our life. We're the ones living. And the same goes for any entities, any energies. And how you know who your guide is, really your instinct will tell you, your intuition will tell you. So I wanted to talk about this today because this has been such a lot of homework for me, really, because as I said, I had really nobody teaching me or guiding me as far as this stuff is concerned. Yes, I've read some books, but really I've put bits and pieces together on my own through trial and error, and really just going by what feels right for me. So I'm offering this to the space today. I'm offering this to you. You take what you need, you leave the rest, right? So I'm not telling you you have to do certain things. I'm basically just telling you what I've done, what I've learned, and whatever resonates, great. Whatever doesn't, great as well. So I'll leave it here. I think that's enough food for thought. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on YouTube watching, please hit that like, subscribe button. I so greatly appreciate it. Share the episode if you so feel called. If you're on one of the podcast platforms, please share the episode as well. You can send me a message. You can connect with me on social media. I'm on Threads, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. I'd love to see you over there. I will be back next week, as always, every Thursday here on Bridger of Worlds. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I so greatly appreciate you and your presence. And as always, in closing, please remember that you are the medicine and I am just the messenger. Thank you very much.